You've been lied to about what hard work actually does, not in the motivational poster way, not the hustle culture is toxic take you've heard 1,000 times. I mean something more specific, more uncomfortable. The way you've been trained to think about effort, the more you put in, the more you get out, is mathematically backwards when it comes to building real wealth. And the worst part, the people who taught you that weren't wrong about everything. They were just describing the wrong game. Here's what nobody names directly: there are two kinds of economic activity. One trades time for money at a fixed rate, the other builds systems that generate returns whether you're working or not. Almost everyone spends their entire life optimizing the first one and calling it ambition. Think about Marcus. He runs a small digital marketing agency, wakes up at 5:30, answers emails by 6, works through lunch, takes calls on Saturday. His clients love him. His output is genuinely excellent. 3 years in, he's making $180,000 a year and is completely exhausted. He can't take a 2-week vacation because the business dies when he stops moving. He added a third employee. That made things worse, not better. Now, he's managing people on top of everything else. He's not lazy. He's not stupid. He's trapped inside a machine he built himself, and the machine requires him to run it at full speed just to stay in place. If this distinction between effort and leverage is giving you a new lens on your career, hit the subscribe button. At Amelia Invests, we don't just talk about money, we talk about the systems that create it without consuming your life. Now, let's look at why being diligent can actually be a trap. Or take Rachel: corporate job, good salary, diligent. She works late because she believes visibility matters. Staying in the office signals commitment. She volunteers for every project. Her manager has started treating her like a default resource for anything that doesn't have an owner. She's doing the work of two people. Her last performance review said she was a strong contributor. No promotion, no raise above the standard 3%, just more work assigned to her because she always says yes and always delivers. Her diligence has trained people around her to see her as a workhorse, not a decision maker. The more she produces, the more she confirms that role. Then there's Daniel. He's been in the same industry for 8 years. He reads everything, attends every workshop, takes courses in the evenings. His knowledge base is impressive. He can talk about any concept with depth, but his income hasn't moved meaningfully in 4 years. Not because the market doesn't value what he knows, because knowledge sitting inside a person's head is worth almost nothing, unless it's connected to a lever. He's been accumulating inputs with no system to convert them into outputs that scale. 3 different people, 3 different failure modes, but the same root problem underneath all of them. They are all optimizing for effort, and effort is a terrible investment strategy. Here's the mechanism nobody teaches you. Not in school, not in most financial content, not even in most business advice. Your income potential isn't capped by how hard you work. It's capped by how leveraged your work is. Leverage, in the most basic sense, means this: how many times does one unit of your effort get multiplied before it creates value? A lawyer billing hours, leverage of 1. A lawyer who writes a legal framework used by 10,000 small businesses through a software product, leverage of 10,000. Same legal knowledge, radically different economic result. Most people never ask this question about their own work. If I stopped doing this tomorrow, what would keep producing? If the answer is nothing, if the whole thing depends on your continued presence, then you're not building wealth. You're renting out your time and calling it a career. This is the point where most people nod along and then go back to doing exactly what they were doing, because the alternative feels irresponsible. Doing less feels like giving up. It feels like you're not taking things seriously enough, not grateful enough for the opportunity, not committed enough to the outcome. American work culture has a deep moral weight attached to visible effort. Busy is virtuous. Swamped means important. And rest, real strategic rest, reads as laziness. So even when people intellectually understand that leverage matters more than hours, they can't emotionally let go of the habit. They add one more task to the list. They take one more meeting. They feel guilty on Sunday if they're not being productive. And that guilt is the trap, not the work itself. The guilt that keeps you from doing less, even when doing less is the only move that actually scales. Here's the turn: the people who build real income, not just good income, real, structural, asymmetric income, don't work harder than everyone else. They're fanatical about what they don't do. They're almost aggressive about it. They cut meetings that don't move decisions forward. They say no to clients who pay well, but consume disproportionate attention. They ignore opportunities that are genuinely good, but aren't the right shape. They're not lazy. They're not arrogant. They're protecting something most people give away for free: the cognitive space to work on the thing that actually multiplies. And when you watch them from the outside, it can look like they're not trying hard enough until you see the results. The most dangerous version of this problem isn't the person who's burning out. It's the person who's productive enough to feel fine, but not leveraged enough to actually get ahead, because burnout is visible. You know something's wrong, you crash, you adjust, you recover. But the slow treadmill, where you're working hard, not miserable, making reasonable money, feeling generally okay, that one is invisible. You can stay on it for a decade and never notice that the distance between you and real financial independence keeps getting wider, not narrower. Here's the counterintuitive part: the times in Marcus's career when he grew the most, when clients referred other clients without being asked, when projects created reputation that brought in new work on their own, were always the periods when he was less reactive, less available, less buried in execution. Not because he worked fewer hours, but because when he had space, he thought about structure instead of deliverables. He designed the work instead of doing the work. The hours he protected from client calls were the hours that produced the most economic value. He just never counted them that way. Most people never make this distinction. They count hours worked. They don't count the hours spent designing work that doesn't require their presence. Those invisible hours are the ones that actually compound. Psychologically, there's a specific reason why this is hard to sustain, even when you understand it. Human beings are wired to feel productive when they're in motion. Motion feels like progress. Sitting quietly and thinking about your business model doesn't feel like working, even when it's the most important work you could be doing. Your brain releases satisfaction from completing tasks, checking things off a list, sending the reply, finishing the project. Strategic thinking has no checkbox. It has no completion moment. So your nervous system doesn't reward it the same way. This is why smart people keep themselves buried in execution. Not because they don't know better, because knowing better doesn't fix the neurological feedback loop that rewards busyness over leverage. Rachel understood this conceptually. She'd read the books. She knew about the 80-20 principle, knew that a small number of actions were probably driving most of her results, but every time she tried to cut back, some version of guilt kicked in. The feeling that she was letting someone down, that she'd look like she wasn't a team player, that saying no would damage a relationship she'd spent years building. So she kept absorbing work, kept delivering, kept being indispensable in a way that made her replaceable. because anyone could eventually learn to do what she did. What they couldn't do easily was replace someone who thought at a higher level, but she never gave herself the room to operate there. There's a specific decision pattern that separates people who build leverage from people who stay busy. It's not about working smarter. That phrase has been beaten into meaninglessness. It's about what you protect before the week starts versus what you protect after you see what other people need from you. People who stay on the treadmill make time for deep work after the demands get handled. People who build real economic leverage make time for the structural work first and handle demands with whatever's left. Same week. Completely different outcome over 2 years. Daniel's problem was related, but slightly different. He'd been adding knowledge without ever choosing a specific problem to make unsolvable by anyone else. Generalists with broad knowledge compete on availability and price. Specialists who own a specific, expensive problem compete on who they choose to work with. The market doesn't pay for knowing a lot, it pays for solving something no one else can. Every course Daniel took widened his knowledge and diluted his market position at the same time. He needed to do less, go deeper, and let some things go entirely. The people who 10 times their income over 5 years aren't the ones who hustled hardest. They're almost always the ones who got very specific about what they were building and ruthlessly ignored everything that didn't connect to that structure. They looked from the outside like they were leaving money on the table, short term, they were. But the architecture they were building was designed to produce at a scale that the scattered approach never reaches. There's a number most people never calculate. How much is 1 hour of your time worth if you spend it on the highest leverage activity available to you right now, not your average hourly rate? The ceiling, the single thing that if you did it consistently would move your income the most over the next 12 months. Most people have no idea what that number is. And because they don't know it, they have no basis for deciding what to cut. They cut things that feel optional instead of things that are actually low value. They protect meetings because canceling feels rude. They answer emails in real time because the inbox creates urgency. They stay busy in ways that feel responsible. And the work that would actually change their financial trajectory gets treated like a luxury, something they'll get to when things slow down. Things never slow down. You have to make them slow down on purpose, against your instincts, against the approval of people who equate your busyness with your value. Marcus eventually stopped taking new clients for 4 months. Revenue dipped. He was terrified. During those 4 months, he built a service offering that could be delivered by his team without him in the room. The following year, he made more than he'd ever made while working half the hours he used to bill. He didn't discover a secret. He just stopped confusing motion with progress long enough to build something that didn't require him to be in motion. The question isn't whether you're working hard enough. The question is whether what you're working on would still produce value if you disappeared for 6 months. If the answer makes you uncomfortable, that's not the market telling you to work harder. That's architecture. And right now, you're choosing not to build it. If you're ready to stop renting your time and start building your leverage, join our community by subscribing. We're here to help you master the architecture of true wealth. I'll see you in the next video.